Welcome everyone, this is Karuta Chat and we're here with Ara Mahar. So, Ara, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Ara. I've been playing Karuta for maybe 5 years. I've been playing a little in the US, a little in Japan, and I recently started an online Karuta practice group where I've been playing with people from all around the world.
Okay, so great. I'm going to put that link of your Karuta group in the podcast description so everyone can go. And do you remember at what age and how did you start with Kyogi Karuta? How you were interested?
Yeah, so I would have been about 25 or so, maybe 24. And I was at an event for kimono. Anyone who knows me knows I wear lots of kimono. And there was an event in the city I'm in. And we all gathered to put on kimono and walk through the town together to sort of show people kimono exists and you can wear kimono too. And just the person walking in front of me was talking about Karuta. And I was like, I tapped her on the shoulder and I said, isn't that like that manga and that anime that's really popular now? And she's like, yeah, have you heard of it? I was like, yeah, I'm kind of interested. And so she told me about the club. We were very lucky to have a club in that city. And I joined right after that. And the rest is history.
Mm-hmm. So at that time, you haven't really watched Chihayafuru, just heard of it. Or you watched?
Yeah, I had seen like one episode and was like, oh, that's neat, but just never ended up continuing watching it. Just so many other things I was watching and doing. So I'd seen a little bit, I was aware of it, but still to this day haven't really gotten too far into it.
Okay. Then do you have any tips, let's say, for someone who is just going to start with Kyogi Karuta? What's the biggest tip?
Yeah, so for beginners, the best thing you can do for any beginner in anything is to find a community first, if you can, be it online or in person or whatever you can find, because learning things by yourself is hard and it can be frustrating and you won't know what questions to ask or how to start. So I would say the number one thing is just find other people. They can help you learn, they can keep you motivated, they can keep you invested. If you can find people to play in person, that's obviously ideal. But now we have, we have our Facebook group, there's a Reddit group, there's a Discord server, there's people who have blogs about Karuta. So there's a lot of resources now. So I would say get involved, find some friends. And then anything you want to learn from there, you could either learn by asking or just by sitting there and watching other people play and other people learn, and you can pick up a lot from that. So,
yeah. So basically, in translation, join her Facebook group.
I mean, I wouldn't mind.
Yeah. Okay. Another point is when you start Karuta, so how hard is it to learn the kimarijis and everything involved in that? So you can actually start playing. How long do you think it will take?
Yeah, so for me in particular, I am bad at memorizing, so it took me a long time. I kind of dragged my feet and wasn't memorizing them as quickly as I could. So it probably took me half a year maybe before I learned them, because I just was really slow and was having so much fun anyway. and I was mostly using flashcards. There's a really great website and app called Anki, and it uses a really great system to help you learn the cards by I forget the name of the system, but it shows you not cards randomly, but cards based on how well you know them. So cards you don't know, it'll show you more often, and cards you're very good at, it will put on hold for a while. So that worked well for me. I just didn't do it as often as I should. And what forced me to have to learn them all was our team was invited to join an international tournament in Japan, and I was going to go with them. So suddenly I thought, I should learn all the cards. So that really forced me to kind of hunker down and finish memorizing them all. And I think I had like 90, almost all of them memorized, but not quite. And then played the tournament. And from there, I was like, I'm going to learn these really well. I'm not going to let that happen again. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there was a specific deck for you, or you put it all manually?
Yeah, I searched the database and found a deck someone else made, but I just learned very simple, very basic, just with the front and the back. And then for learning the Kimariji specifically, I used an app that's in Japanese, and I don't even remember the name of it, but it showed you both the Kimariji for the second half, but also for the first half. That way you could learn how much do you need to listen to, and then how much on the second half do you have to bother to memorize to really keep it nice and short and efficient, since I needed that help with memorizing. So I used those two together.
Okay. So basically, Anki and practice.
Yes, exactly. Truly.
Okay. None any other resources?
Nowadays, there's a lot more than when I started. Back then, in English, there was nothing. There really wasn't anything, which is why, other than using, I use wasaramochi, in English, wasaramoti. Use that all the time just for listening to the cards. I have all of the apps still on this phone, so let's see. But a lot of the other things were just in Japanese because there just wasn't anything in English.
Mm-hmm.
So let's
just like a disclaimer, wasaramochi is only available on Android.
Yeah, that makes me so sad.
Yeah.
Yep. So I use Anki for memorizing. I use wasaramochi to listening practice. The app that I used to learn the Kimariji is just called Hyakunin Isshu. Very specific.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was it. That's all I used. But nowadays, there's so much more available. Obviously, the online Karuta app is a really great resource and has a lot of features in it to help you learn as well. So I would definitely recommend, even if you don't want to play online, that's an amazing resource to do. They have 2 mini games. They have a mini game where you can just look at the cards and practice saying what they are and like flick them away, and has it's a lot more interactive and fun than the old days when we're just like flashcards. So
yeah, okay. So I'm going to put all those links too in the description of the podcast. And let's see. So you're a beginner and you already passed a year by. So once you have all memorized, all the Kimarijis, you know all the cards, what's the next hardest thing?
So lucky for me, after that tournament, I was actually living in Japan. So I got to practice with a Japanese club. And that was really great because they, just playing games, just like with any sport or any musical instrument, you don't just play the full piece. You have to practice different components of playing styles, different parts of different pieces. So that club was really good at doing that. And that helped me a lot to get better at actual physical part of playing the game. So, after learning the cards, then it was about practicing your speed of reaction time, practicing your accuracy of hitting the place you want to go, practicing memorizing the actual layout. So once I had all the cards memorized, I had already been playing games, that doesn't really change. It was about breaking down the individual pieces. And even to this day, that's still really hard. So that's the part that really separates, beginners from more advanced players, is those techniques and getting better at that. So I think that's the hardest part from now onward. That's that's kind of the core basics that you have to keep practicing and practicing and practicing.
Yeah, and that is true because I started like months ago, as you know, and yeah, I don't know how many, but a lot of months, and I'm still practically a beginner when I play, so it's really, really hard. And also, you mentioned your Karuta Facebook group, but apart from that, you have a Karuta club in your country. You're currently living in Japan, or where are you right now?
So right now I am in Boston, Massachusetts.
Yeah. And Boston has many Karuta clubs, I think.
We have one club, but we are very close to two of the other clubs, and there are not many in the U.S., so we have almost all of them right in the East Coast, so yeah.
Okay. Okay, and do you have any specific exercise, let's say, because of Kyogi Karuta that you do outside of playing?
Yeah, so depending on so the key is to kind of establish what your weaknesses are and then focus on those the most. So for me, reaction time and memorizing are my weaknesses. So a couple of things that I do for me will be things like, set up a playing field. It could be just your half. It could be both halves. It could be just the opponent's half randomly. Whatever you want to work on that day, however much time you have. Set it up. Take the memorization time and then flip everything over and then just go through and see if you can remember what everything is. So that's really great for memorizing. Another thing I really need is reaction time, which is tied in with memory in that you have to, everyone hears at the same time, but how quickly do you hear it and then translate it to where that card is? So my favorite practice is a really basic practice where you just take 10 cards, maybe less, maybe a few more, of similar cards. So maybe like half of them are A cards, half of them are something else, and you play just those cards with a few karafuda or silent cards that aren't on the board, and just practice differentiating between similar cards. So if you have two long cards, asaborake a, asaborake u, you have to react at that last moment. And not just that last moment, but you hear asabo, you have to move towards one, pick one. And then when you hear that final sound, you have to be able to move to your opponent's side or your side. And so I find that very challenging. So I find practicing that to be very, very beneficial. You don't need to waste an hour or more playing a whole game. Just take a chunk of really similar cards, put them spread out between you and a fake opponent, and just practice with those cards, differentiating between, okay, like I hear ka, what's the second part going to be, and then immediately reacting and finding that card. So that's my favorite practice, and it can be really short and quick or longer if you want, so it's very flexible.
Okay, and let's say what about when I never play physically, but when you play physically, you do some specific exercises for your body, because in Chihayafuru I noticed that it's a really tired position to be.
Absolutely. So a couple of things you can do when you have another person and to prepare you for playing real games is play lots of games, of course, obviously, and especially if you're if you're ever going to do a tournament for whatever reason, you have to practice the tournament conditions, because I jumped into that tournament before I even knew all the cards, and it's so exhausting for your body. It's tiring for your arm, it's tiring for your legs, for your back, for everything. So just replicating those conditions helps. And then on the sort of smaller term, key things that you need to build up is like arm strength and the specific muscles that you need for taking cards. So one of my favorite ways to do that's really fun and works well when you have a partner is you have the other person have a stack of cards sitting opposite you. They put a card down in front of you, and you have to, as quick as you can, hit the card. And then they just do it again and again and again. Quick, 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 quick. Hit, 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 hit. And so it's really good for building stamina and strength and speed of your arm muscles for what you'll need for Karuta. Of course, in real Karuta, it's only one card and then sit and wait. One card, sit and wait. But it's going to be almost 100 cards by the end and then maybe on to the next game. So this sort of rapid fire practice really builds up more muscle than you need, which is what you want. Enough muscle that like a regular game will be easy. So that's really great for that.
Yeah, and it seems like fun because your partner doesn't necessarily have to know Kyogi Karuta or anything related.
Anyone can do it with you, and it ends up getting really crazy and wild and silly because you're just hitting cards all over, and they can place them in different places as well. It doesn't have to be the same place, so they can kind of like go over here, and you're trying to catch the card, and it can be like really fun. And I always had a really great time doing that with my team in Japan, where I learned that it was everybody's favorite warm up. And that's another key point, is that these are great warm-ups. These are things you can do not just on their own, but before playing a match. In any, well, I can't say any, in probably most groups in Japan, and I think maybe a lot of groups in the US don't necessarily do this, they warm up before every session, just like any other sport. So you do a couple of different warm-up practices to get the muscles strengthened and warmed up and flexible, and then you play a game. So, anytime you sit down for a match, just do a quick little practice before it, doing either any of the things I said, or there's others, and I think people are starting to write about them and record videos of them so they can hopefully be found online. And do that every time before you play, and just like any other physical activity, you'll find yourself a lot more ready and prepared and fast and when the game actually starts.
Yeah, hopefully faster. And what about the knees, for example? Are you having cramps or anything?
Yeah, I have very bad knees, so I have a lot of experience with this. All of the physical therapists I've consulted say that we as non-Japanese people are not generally used to sitting on our knees and being on our knees like that. So that can be very hard and very painful and and just not good for you if you just go right into it and sit on your knees for like an hour or more. So my one recommendation that I've been told by my physical therapist is to support the knee, you can build muscle above and below it, and that increased muscle can take some of the pressure off of the knee itself, especially when getting up and getting down, which in a really competitive game may happen all the time. You may be swiping off cards and you have to get up and get them, and that sitting up and sitting down can be really stressful. And so if you're just starting out, use cushions, use like knee pads, use whatever you need. I will use a cushion until the day I die, and I have no shame, and I brought it to Japan with me and no one else used it, and I don't care. So use a cushion if you want, especially in the beginning, and then just work on flexibility and strength of the surrounding muscles in your leg to help support the knee. And do not, if it hurts, stop. don't let it get worse. Take it from me.
Okay. And do you have are you participating in any tournament that is coming?
Yes. So coming up later this month is an international tournament. I guess it's Otsu. Otsu is hosting an international tournament for countries all around the world. I think we've probably got 10 or more different countries. I haven't checked recently. And I will be on Team USA. I think May 23rd, I believe. So, and we have, and if anyone listening is interested in participating in tournaments, they do happen, depending on what country you're in, with different regularity. But if you join these online communities like our Facebook group, you can hear about them, and you might be able to join too.
Yeah. And just so people can know, currently Peru is not participating in any tournament yet. I tried, but not so far. So if you're a Peruvian hearing this podcast or watching the video on YouTube, please consider joining too, so I can have a chance in participating with this new rule of 4 countries. Okay, and do you have any particular story that you want to share? Something funny that happened in your world of Karuta?
Mm, let me think.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of in general, I have been impressed by how nice everyone is. I think, Karuta can be really intimidating because it can be very difficult to learn all the cards, and it's this kind of traditional poetry, and it can feel a little overwhelming. But time and time again, I've just found that people who play, and it's a competition. People want to win. So in the game,
Yeah.
sometimes, people might argue over cards, but time and time again, I have just met some of the nicest people who are so supportive and kind. And when I went to that tournament, before I even had all the cards memorized, I was so nervous. There were teams from every prefecture in Japan there. There was a Korean team. There was us. It was a huge gymnasium filled with people, everybody in kimono and hakama, of course. And here I was, only there because we had enough spaces for it. Like, I didn't do anything to deserve it, so I felt so like unworthy and scared and nervous, and I was like getting like sweating. I was like, oh my god, and we're gonna play against the best team in this whole prefecture. And so we sat down for that game, and I clearly looked nervous and was worried and scared. And my opponent, a Japanese guy, like when we're like practicing our swings at the beginning, he could probably tell. He said like, "Don't worry, don't be nervous," in English, and I was like,
and he just more nervous.
Yeah, no, actually, I was like, oh my. He said it in a way that was so sweet. Yeah. And like don't worry, but it was like just so kind, like, oh, don't worry, it's okay, like, don't worry. And I was like, oh, and he was so nice to me, and using his broken English to kind of chat and calm me down, and obviously he destroyed me, and I took no cards at all, but he was so nice before and so nice after, and all smiley and friendly, and it just like, I think that was a really important part in my Karuta career, where I could have like really been too scared and been like, oh, that was an awful experience and never tried again. But because he was so nice, it really made me think like, wow, like people support me and people love this and are nice and friendly. And so that was a really kind of precious memory. And of course, I went on to keep studying and trying my best after that. So I don't know what his name is, and I don't know if he even remembers me, but I'll always remember that moment in particular. But that kind of thing has happened many times since, people being really nice and supportive, especially in Japan. People are really excited to see foreigners trying to, play this game in Japanese, even if they don't speak Japanese, and I think they're as excited as we are to try to play. So,
That's what you say. And at that time, you didn't really talk Japanese, right? Because you do talk now.
I had like intermediate, like lower intermediate, so I could say like, "How's the weather?" or "How are you today?" But arguing. I remember one tournament I did in Japan. We had a contested card, and so the girl starts arguing over the card, and I'm like, I have no idea what she's saying. So I'm just like, "Hi, dozo," like, you take it. So I had enough for casual conversation, but not enough to use it in Karuta and actually fight over cards or anything like that. Even now, I think that's still probably the hardest thing you could do in a foreign language, is like fight over a card. But people are, Japanese people in particular, are always willing to try their best to meet you more than halfway and like come to your side and help you a lot. So I've always been very supported in that respect.
Yeah, okay. And one thing I always wanted to ask, like, Stone is really hosting these tournaments, and they're online or free. But one thing I saw on Chihayafuru is that I don't know if you have watched enough to know who Taichi is. I think you do.
I've heard. I remember the name.
Okay. So Taichi sometimes went to other tournaments more than Chihaya because he had money. So I was wondering, before the pandemic, in Japan, you used to pay for participating in tournaments and
Yeah.
how expensive it was. I was
Mhm.
wondering about that.
Yeah, so I did a couple of different tournaments in Japan. I did some team tournaments, I did some individual tournaments, and the price varies based on your level. The higher level, the more expensive. So for, gosh, it's been a few years. So I entered mostly DQ, one time EQ, but it was all like 6-year-old, like 8-year-old kids, so I never did that again. And I think for something like DQ, and now the levels have changed, so I think they got rid of EQ or something like that. They've changed what the levels are, but back then in like 2016, 2017, it was maybe like $30 equivalent for entry. Not super expensive, but the higher levels more and more, and the higher tournaments could increase the price. I'm not sure how expensive they got, but I never saw anything more than for like high school level tournaments and sort of free individual tournaments. I never saw more than like $40-50 at the most. But I'm sure for these big international ones, it must be more. I didn't take care of paying for our big team tournament, so I have no idea what we paid. The plane tickets themselves were expensive enough, and then renting kimono for people who don't have kimono, and then hotel, and so the cost of the tournament was irrelevant.
Okay, so there were no free tournaments.
Not that I participated in. I think if it's sanctioned by the All Japan Karuta Association, they kind of have to get entry fees just because they have to pay the reader, they have to pay judges, they have to pay for the place. So anything sanctioned, I would assume, has to cost, unless there's some special, like charity, like foreigners come for free. Sometimes they do that. But you know, there certainly have been unofficial, like fun tournaments can be organized, but those, you can't increase your rank. They're not recorded. They don't. And most people in Japan care about increasing their rank and having officially on the books tournaments. So, in now online, we are doing a lot of free ones, as you mentioned. But yeah, in Japan, it's mostly just the officially sanctioned and pay to enter, just so they can pay everyone who helps out with them.
Okay. And I have another huge doubt. It's just, I'm sure many people who watch Chihayafuru have this, but they always say, okay, you're DQ, DQ, DQ. But in these tournaments, I often heard he is like San, Q or 9Q. I think they're labeled now by numbers. And so what's the equivalent there?
Right. So there are Q, like E, D, all the way up to A, and then there's Dan, which go like 1 Dan, 2 Dan, 3 Dan, and they're kind of separate systems that you can attain. So, for example, I know one of the American people we play with just got Ichidan, which is like the first level, and then it goes up. So like 1 is the lowest versus the letter ones, it's E is the lowest, and you go up to A. But they're separate systems that will have different requirements. I think for her, she got it because she won a tournament, and that was and you apply for it and they give it to you, and then you pay annually to be a part of the All Japan Karuta Association, so you can keep that accreditation, and if you stop paying, it goes away. So a little tough.
And so what's the maximum? For example, in the other, I think it's 8Q, and in this Dan.
Yeah, I was just talking about this recently, and I'm trying to remember. At a certain point, it stops being. I'm not sure. I think around 6 it stops being like a reward for playing and becomes sort of honorary. Once you get past that, it's like an honorary title we give you. So there are some readers, Karuta readers, who have like, I think like 9 Q or 9 Dan is like the highest, I think. And it's just like, that's not like a thing you can actually get through playing. But I'm not entirely sure of the numbers, but yeah, I think something like 6 for like regular play, and but you know, even like the Meijin, the Queen and Meijin matches, sometimes the players aren't even ranked that high, so it's not necessary for anything other than like here I am, here's how good I am. But yeah, I'm not quite sure about the numbers, since being outside of Japan, they're not very useful for us.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was confused because I think I heard Kyudan and I was like, but that's A because it doesn't really go that much, right? Okay.
Right.
Oh, at least I know now that 1 is the lowest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And my favorite question: do you have any specific favorite poems? And if you have a top 10, that would be awesome.
Oh, also, I just found the Dan ranking.
Okay.
So D class is equivalent to Ichidan, 1 Dan, C class 2 Dan, B class 3 Dan, A class 4 Dan, and above. So yeah, I think 4, and then so that's why I think it can get higher than 4, but much higher, and it stops meaning anything. But anyway, I had to know. I didn't want to be giving people bad information. But yes, poems that I like, cards that I like. So as anyone who gets to know me will learn, there's one card that I like more as a card than as the whole poem. And that's because of the Kimari-ji. And that's Yamaga. And now everybody knows my weakness. Because I lived in a town called Yamaga in Japan. So it was just really easy to remember that card, because I'm like, here I am in Yamaga, let's take Yamaga. So that card, and I loved it there, and I loved my town, nothing but good memories. So that card really brings up a mental image that's so powerful and strong that it's very easy to remember the card and where it is and get it quickly. So I like that card in particular. The funny thing is, I learned it as Yamaga, the Kimari-ji, but then when you learn the poem, and you actually learn that's cutting off the middle of a word. the word is Yamagawa, mountain river. So it's like you're saying mountain ri.
Yeah.
So yeah, my favorite card is mountain ri. So it's very interesting when you learn things by just Kimari-ji, and then you actually learn what the meanings are later, and you realize you're cutting things off in strange places. But lately I've been trying to learn the poems themselves, like not memorize them, but just learn what they are, read through them. And a very nice, amazing, fantastic, talented player in our group has been writing blog posts talking about the meanings of poems. So I have discovered some really interesting poems that I really like. And I think one of the ones that shocked me the most that I now like even more was Mise. And in my head, just learning the Kimari-ji, I thought of Mise means store in Japanese by itself. So I always thought of it that way in my head. But then when I heard the translation and sort of what the probable meaning was, it was this dramatic, like clapback poem written as a response to some other guy's poem. And it's like, talks about like staining your sleeves wet, which is a total meme and trope in Karuta cards. But like wet with maybe blood from like crying so much, and it's like so dramatic. And I was like, the whole time I was learning the card, it's like, oh, I'm shopping in a store, and then it's like blood on my sleeves from crying. And so that one has really stuck with me. So I find that I think a lot of the poems are beautiful, but for me, I really like the dramatic ones. I really like the sad poems. I really like Hanano is written by Ono no Komachi, and she had a really sad life, and kind of thinking about her life and what it meant to her really this is really touching and depressing kind of, and that those kinds of poems where you're sort of shocked when you learn the deeper levels of meaning and what it meant to the writer, the author, and so I really like those poems where you can learn so much more by learning about the context. And for me as a history buff, that's really interesting, and so I like a lot of those poems, but I'm still trying to like work through them and read these posts my friend is doing, and looking forward to finding new favorite poems in the future.
Yeah, and I think that happens to all of us because we have our own personal and own tricks of how to memorize the poems. So for me, I invented a lot of weird stories around the cards so to learn them, and they are far from the truth of the real poem. I also watched another anime, but this is different than Chihayafuru because it's, the bad part is it's really short, has like 8 episodes I think, but it tells each episode a story of the poem. So Ono no Komachi was on one of those, and it's really cool because it's not an anime about playing Karuta, but an anime about the backstory.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
I hope so, because
Uta Koi.
The name. Yeah.
I have it right here. It's Chōyaku Hyakunin Isshu, Uta Koi.
Yeah.
And I love that. That's exactly the kind of thing I love of they make the poem into like a real story where you actually get to watch and make it a little more interesting and maybe not necessarily realistic, but that's fine. That helps you create this mental image that's really easy, and so I love that.
Yeah, because I tend to watch, I tend to look for the stories of the poem and what they meant, but then the next day pass and I don't remember anymore. So having this anime is really interesting because, well, anything that is visual really helps you more in retaining, right? So that's an anime that I will ask you to send me the name again later so I can put it in the description and more people watch it. But yeah, it's really short. I think it really has like a few episodes. I hope they create more because it was interesting and I want to see the backstory of all the poems.
Yeah, all 100, please. That would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think with that we close, unless you want to say like your final words.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Okay. I just want to say that, I always joke to everybody that I'm a terrible player and my memorizing is bad. I'm the worst. But, so I feel, even if you're bad at memorizing, even if you have terrible knees, even if you're lazy, even if whatever, anybody can learn Karuta. I have seen people who don't know any Japanese memorize the cards just by looking at them. I've seen children, like 8-year-old Americans, learn. I've seen old people, young people. So I just want to say that, if you're thinking about it, if you have even a little spark of interest, find someone else in person, online, whatever, try to share that and grow together with that. And anybody can learn to play. And it's really fun. Even if you only know 10 cards, you can play with those 10 cards. So, don't be overwhelmed by how much there is to learn and how difficult it might be to memorize or play. Start small. Find someone to help motivate you and maybe learn with you. That's always really great. And, don't give up and reach out to people, and you can have a whole heck of a lot of fun. So yeah, don't give up and please join us.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And also in the Karuta app, like competitive Karuta online app, you have the ability to play with team Marigi's on the cards. So you can practice that way if you haven't memorized them at all.
Yep.
Okay, so that was it. And I hope to see you soon in any other episode of this podcast. And we're looking forward to it.
Thank you for having me.
Yay. So So I really wanted to start this Karuta chat with you because you've done so many good things to the Karuta world. Uh, yeah, even the Facebook group that was huge because even me, I am in Peru. I will have maybe never played Karuta if I didn't find your group. So that's why I wanted to start with you. And if from the person that are watching, we're going to have more guests. So keep looking forward to it. And thank you so much, Ara.
Thank you.
Bye to everyone and keep looking for more episodes.
Yay.